The other day, I realized that there's this one question I get asked at least once a week that I've never answered here. And I thought, okay, why don't we dive into it? The question is usually around lessons. Should I have lessons, or do you think I'll be able to DIY it? And if I have lessons, what sort of lessons should I have? Should I be going for group lessons or should I be going for private lessons? And you know what? I think that, as with so many other questions that I answer, it all depends. And I think it depends on where you're at right now in your riding. So I want to dive into it today. To DIY, to group lesson, or to private lesson? That's the question. Let's jump in. Hey there, and welcome to the Daily Strides podcast. My name is Lorna Leeson. I'm an equestrian trainer and coach, and I work with riders from all over the world, helping them go from not knowing what to do each day in the saddle to actually creating a plan, have an outcome for each ride, and working towards something that lights them up with their horse, especially if they don't have a regular coach or trainer. Okay, and today I want to talk about how very often these types of riders, they get kind of stuck in a bit of a rut and they're not quite sure how to move out of that. And again, then they'll reach out and they'll often say, look, like, what should I be doing? Should I be doing lessons? If so, what sort of lessons? Like, what are you suggesting here for me moving forward? And I think that, look, I think when you're starting out, you need lessons, okay? I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I'm not into this half-baked nonsense of hacking on and hacking to get hacking, okay? I think that lessons are really important to get you going the correct way, because I do think that those foundational basics are absolutely essential, and the lack of them is going to colour everything else going forward, okay? So I think that when you're starting out, yes, you want to get private lessons, and I would then definitely suggest private lessons to help get you going, because with the private lessons you get the instructor's time, but also they're shorter, because remember, your riding fitness now wouldn't be great at that point in the journey. Now, the other time that I think that this can be really important is if you are struggling with a complete lack of confidence. I think then almost like treat it like a beginner and go for the private lessons, go for the shorter sessions, but it's actually for a different reason. The reason would be that so often riders who struggle with confidence, they are terrified that when they're riding with other riders, the other riders are going to run into them, or they're going to do something that's going to cause absolute panic and pandemonium in the arena. And they just can't focus because of that. They're so stressed because of that. So I would say, yeah, definitely go for the private lessons in that situation. Now, what I would also suggest here is I think that all riders who fall into kind of this category, so again, more beginners and also then riders who have lost their confidence, they should actually have some watching lessons. I don't know what else to call these, okay? But it's where you would sit with an instructor, okay, with somebody who is knowledgeable, and you're going to watch other riders. Now, ideally, these other riders will be a little bit further down the line than you, okay? They're a little bit more experienced, okay? They don't have to be great, but they're getting on a little bit more. And the reason is that your instructor can begin to point out concepts that actually allow you to gain more clarity about what's going on when you're back in the saddle on your regular riding lesson. So posting to the trot is a good one. So many riders, you can explain it till the cows come home and they're like, what, up, down, what are you talking about? And then when they see another rider do it, and especially what I like to do is I would say to the rider that's being watched, I would say, can you do some sitting trot? Great. Can you do some posting? Great. And the rider then, the beginner rider, can see the difference. Now, this also comes in with, for example, bending and flexion, things like that. Heels down is another one, okay? They can watch what's going on with riders who are a little bit more advanced than they are, and they can see what's going on there. And I think that that's really important. I think from the perspective of the confidence, that also can help, that they can see, first of all, that it's all going grand. Everybody's keeping the horse between themselves and the ground, and it's all working out well, okay? And they can then begin to see that there is an alternative to the maybe repeated thoughts going on in their head that, that's not the outcome that's going on there, okay? So they also get to kind of create this alternative version of what could happen. Now, I would suggest in both these situations, maximum 30-minute lessons when they're riding and in the saddle, and they must be fun. I have to stress this, it has to be enjoyable. It has to be light-hearted. I'm not saying they're not going to learn, they are, but I think the caliber of the instructor in this situation is really, really important. Okay, next group of riders would be the more competent ones. The ones that are able to navigate the horse around the arena without running into something. The ones that are able to kind of do the basics, the whoa, the go, and the turning, okay? So that would be what I'd class as competent. I think the best way forward here is group lessons. You get to almost accelerate what you are learning, what you are getting to experience through not only doing it yourself, but also observation. Now, the other reason I think that this is really helpful for riders in this boat or in this situation is because so often these riders are not riding fit and they want to do, quote unquote, more, but they're not able to sustain the physical energy and fitness and even the mental concentration and clarity to kind of sustain more for longer periods of time. So when you're working with a group, you get breaks. While your instructor is busy working with somebody else, you get to kind of rest, catch up, to let the body kind of get its wits about it again. And then from there, you're actually also learning through things that maybe you don't experience, but you're seeing somebody else go through it and you get to learn as well. So I would definitely say group lessons. And of course, group lessons are great because everybody there's a bit of a camaraderie around it and everybody, you can do it, let's go. And it can be really motivating and inspiring as well, which is great. And then the next group of lessons, well, they're kind of my people. I'm going to call them happy hackers, okay? You don't have to, if you don't like that term, don't be panicking, okay? But these are riders who, they are not only competent with the steering, the stopping, the going, the starting, all that fun stuff in the arena, they can also fairly well manage themselves and their horse outside of the arena as well. And these are usually the riders I work with, okay? That they've got a good basic foundation of what's going on. They're walking, they're trotting, they're cantering, they're able to do the things, okay? Now, these riders, they are often the ones who find themselves in limbo. And this is who I really have made this episode for, okay? Because they're not sure of what to do. They know kind of how to, quote unquote, ride, and they have enough knowledge that they could maybe watch a video or read a book or listen to a podcast and be able to kind of sort of apply it and maybe get some positive results. But where things tend to go wrong here is the focus and the intention. When you're just riding on your own all the time, you tend to wander. It's a bit like the racehorse who's led the race the whole way. He's out in front all the way. Very rarely will that horse win, okay? It's just this mental focus and concentration to keep going, okay? It wanes, and that's where somebody else who has not had to do that so much, they've been still doing the same kind of physical output, but it's the mental clarity and focus. That horse will then be able to come up and it'll have a little bit more in the tank to get over the line. So I think that this can often happen for those types of riders. So I actually think in this situation, you need to find a mixed approach, a blended approach, okay? I think that groups can be really, really fun here. This is where maybe joining a riding club or finding a group of riders in a similar area to you who are at a similar level to you, and you could hire somebody to give you all a lesson together, or you could hire out a venue where you're all going to go together to maybe practice a specific discipline or something that this venue kind of offers. They offer, you can hire the arena, let's say, okay, and you can hire the equipment. And you guys, there's maybe 4 of you and you're all going together and you're kind of helping each other out. Or you're, as I said, meeting an instructor there who's going to give you a lesson at that point. I also think clinics are brilliant in this situation, as well as just going on trails together, getting out and about together, really important. However, I also think this is where private lessons can really come into their own. And what I would say is, again, this blended approach, where you're maybe doing a private lesson every second week, and then in the in-between weeks, you're riding with your group, okay? Now, the only thing I would say here that I do feel is important is that in that situation, you may have 2 or more different trainers that you're working with. And I would say in that situation that they just need to be aware that you are getting coaching elsewhere, okay? And that you need to just make sure that your trainers are on. They don't have to agree on everything, and you'll rarely find people who will agree on everything, okay? But that they are on the same page. But with the basics, with like the foundational bits, okay, that they're on the same page. Otherwise, you're going to get very conflicting advice and you're not going to go anywhere. You're just going to end up very confused. So yeah, I do think that blended approach is the best way to go through that. Now, inside of Connection every month, we have a live group lesson. And what it is that I am obviously talking to the riders. It's live, like it's fully live. They have their phones, and we're all riding together, okay? And it's so much fun. Sometimes the riders, I'm going to be honest, the topic for the month is something that is maybe a little bit outside of their wheelhouse, okay? So in that case, they still ride, but they are more doing it from an observing point of view, okay? And kind of like, oh, okay, I could do that or I could do this, okay? But for the most part, and especially now this upcoming 3 months, we're going all in on the half halt. So I think pretty much everybody can do that, hey? So yeah, that is really fun. But then I also have my private lessons. And most of these riders are actually riding then with that blended approach that I said, my happy hackers, okay? They are getting private lessons from me, but then they're also doing other things that with their kind of people who are actually there with them. Remember, I'm the virtual coach, okay? So they're doing other things with their can touch and feel people, okay? In real life people. And yeah, it's lovely. And I think it really works out. And what's interesting is so often the things that we work on in our private lessons, they then can kind of take that, and when they put it with, or when they pair it with what they're doing in real life, okay? Not that the private lessons aren't real life that we do online, of course they are, okay? But you know what I mean. They get these like other insights and these like almost like a different perspective, and it actually adds, so it almost like compounds. It speeds up the learning process of what we're doing in our lessons, which is really cool as well. Okay, so all that to be said, I do think that it is important to have some sort of an outside opinion and some sort of a, if necessary, outside guidance every now and then for you in your riding. I think when it's just you and your horse, it can become like a little bit of a vacuum. And I'm going to be honest, that's where, unless you are really, really intentional, really focused, and you're able to motivate yourself and your horse consistently, you're going to end up wandering. You're going to end up like in doing nothing. And I think that it's really, really important to understand that so often just having those touch points, and even if it's once a month with a trainer, I think that that's really important to get you moving forward, to get you over a line. So I'm going to ask you, which is right for you? Would you go with just riding on your own, going solo? Would you go with a group lesson, or would you go with a private lesson? You can let me know inside of the group. Okay, I am going to leave it there. Have an absolutely fantastic week, and I'll chat to you soon. Be good. Bye.